Good evening, everyone around the country, around the world. Thank you for tuning in. This is Spathon, and in this episode, I'm going to get into the latest on the pandemic situation of COVID-19 and see where we are today on March 19th of 2020, currently 7:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it is Thursday. The weekend is upon us, but there's not a whole lot we're going to be able to do because we're all supposed to be sitting indoors, isolating ourselves from everyone, even the people that you live in your house with, your friends, your family, your loved ones. Even keeping a 6-foot distance away from everyone in your home is still strongly advised. So I hope everybody is heeding those precautions. I hope you're keeping your hands clean. And I'm just going to try to stick as close as I can to what I've come up with tonight. And I didn't really get too heavy on the articles because in the last video I got barely maybe halfway through the ones that I pulled up and researched, and I was almost 2 hours into the video. So I'm going to put the poker table down for this episode, at least for the first part of it, and see how far I can get into this, because I kind of want to stick to the main point of this and not get really off track with side things that I have going on. So I'm going to start with my notepad. There's a few things that I had highlighted, and actually a couple of these points, which I think are still equally as relevant today as they were a few days ago. I did make a few points that I added on here a few days ago that I didn't have a chance to get to. But the first thing that I want to mention is that if you have internet, whether if it's on your phone or if you just get it through your computer like I do, I don't have cable TV, haven't had it for years. I do have high-speed internet, but that's the only thing that I use for my entertainment, my video-based entertainment in my house. So I have my computer hardwired to the internet in my bedroom, and then we have a laptop underneath my flat screen in the living room, which I use to watch videos, movies, YouTube, surf the internet when I'm out there. And if you're in the same situation that I am, and if you're not too internet savvy and you still want to find out what's going on out there in the world, you can actually access a number of online live streams of national news networks through YouTube. And without revealing too much here, because I don't want to show too much on what I'm going to be discussing right up front, but let me just quickly go here to YouTube. I was just going to mention it, but I might as well, since I'm doing this format, I might as well just show it to you. So you're probably going to see some of my recommended channels, but I'm fine with that. That's okay. So what I would do, I would type in, let's see, live news. That's probably the best result you'll get, or one of them. And as you can see right off the bat, there's three. Let's see, we've got NBC News that's streaming live right now. ABC News streaming live right now. Bloomberg, I guess if you want to go for that. Sometimes you'll see Sky News or BBC News pop up on here. Yeah, here we go. Sky News live. Watch ABC News live. That's based in Australia. And yeah, I'm not going to recommend those outlets as a reliable news source to get your news from. But when it comes to coronavirus, this is hard news. This isn't politics. This isn't partisanship. This is an epidemic that we're all dealing with. So I hope that I'm kind of using their platforms as an olive branch to extend to those who want to stay current in the news and watch live news, and you can't afford it. You can at least tune into one of these, and hopefully you'll get fair and unbiased facts, and they'll keep you updated with all the latest. From what I've been watching today, again, I went to work all day, so I didn't get to watch too much, but there were a few press conferences that I noticed. Sometime around 4 o'clock this afternoon, it looked like the governor of New York had a press conference, and I believe ABC News streamed that live. And then as soon as he was done with the press conference, they cut into Governor DeSantis's press conference, who is here in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, and he was giving us the latest on what's going on with spring break and all of that nonsense that's going on. And he was giving details on a mobile medical units that are being supplied right now. There's one in Jacksonville. I guess the military airdropped all the supplies to have some sort of a mobile medical unit established to hold something like 200 beds or something like that. So pretty substantial things going on right now. There's a lot happening. The news just keeps picking up speed. And just when you think there's no more to talk about, it's just piling and piling with news that's going on. So definitely the news networks are definitely not busy with Orange Man Bad anymore. They are extremely busy with COVID-19. And This is definitely not the breath of fresh air, no pun intended, that I was looking for when I wanted to watch other news networks that were not completely biased toward one political party or against one political party or against the president in general. But I mean, I don't particularly watch these networks because they're way too left leaning. And ever since the whole 2016 presidential election thing started, they kind of just went way off they just went into crazy town. So, but you can still get your hardcore news that you need to get right now by watching one of these. ABC News, I kept seeing throughout the internet. There is, let's see, what was that? There was some provider, it's in my email, but I don't want to show it right now because I don't want people to know my email address. But I can't remember what it is. There's some internet-based cable provider that ABC Live is streaming from for free, so you only have to sign up with this website. And if it's happening on that particular website that I can't think of, it's probably happening everywhere, including YouTube. So why even bother going elsewhere on the internet to try to find ABC News Live, because it's right here. So
now we have no immediate plans for restrictions on domestic travel, but we continue to say that all options are on the table to deal with the virus.
The president has already announced the closure of the Canadian border to non-essential.
So as you can see, this is what we have going on here. And it's just live. It's just live TV. I'm sure that if you turn on your television, if you have cable right now, and if your cable provider gives you ABC News Live, I'm sure you're watching the same thing that I'm watching right now. I'm sure through YouTube there's probably a delay, as there usually is when cable networks are streaming channels live through the internet. There's usually a few second delay, but this is great. This is nice. It's awesome that ABC can at least find it in their hearts to provide some news content to the world, well, at least to the nation, who either can't afford cable or who just doesn't have it, like me. Especially the older folks who don't have cable, and they can't afford cable or whatever it is, or they just decide not to have it, and they're not really internet savvy. But I just thought that'd be a great thing for you to look for if you don't have constant access to news, and if you just don't feel like going through websites like what I do and read article after article. You can just sit and just play it and just watch it as the news unfolds. So that's the first bit of information that I have for you. The next one, so this is a personal story, and I kind of wonder if this is happening with other workplaces. I assume it is. I mean, you get these big companies that are saying that if any of our employees are diagnosed with coronavirus, that we're going to pay them to be off for as much time as they need. And companies that have closed their doors, like Apple, for example, they're still paying their employees full time, even though they can't work. But what about the smaller companies? I mean, my company is not a smaller company by any means. I mean, my company exists in all 50 states in the country. We have, I believe, thousands of locations. I'm sure it's well beyond hundreds of different locations. So, but at my work, if we're diagnosed with the virus, and if we don't have any PTO in our bank, because I'm sure a lot of people that you might work with, or people that I certainly work with, they just, as soon as they can get 40 hours of PTO saved up, they'll tank it all the way back down to zero and just take a week off. Me, on the other hand, I currently have 60 hours. We only get 80 hours of PTO in an entire year. So for me to have 60 hours of PTO only in the month of March, I mean, that kind of says a lot about my taking vacations just willy-nilly, or just taking time off of work. I don't take time off of work ever, if possible, because back when I was in my 20s, I was laid off a few separate times, one of which was very suddenly. It wasn't overnight. I had like 2 weeks notice. But I was lucky enough to have saved up my PTO up to that point where I had maybe 2 weeks of PTO saved up in my bank, and then they laid us off. And me being in my 20s, I didn't realize, oh wow, they actually give you your PTO hours in the form of a paycheck if you don't use it. It's like, wow, that's awesome. This is really going to help big time. So ever since then, every job that I've had after that, I've made it a really strong point at all possible to not take any time off of work. That way I can bank up my PTO. And if all of a sudden I get let go for whatever reason, I'll have at least a week, maybe 2 weeks worth of full-time hours converted to money that I can still pay my bills with while I look for something else. So anyway, I mean, I thought this was kind of unfair, but I know this is crazy circumstances, so I'm going to put that aside. I mean, your feelings don't matter in this certain situation. But yeah, but my work, if for those at my workplace who are tested positive for coronavirus in the future, and if they don't have any PTO, my work will allow them to go home and still pay them full time just so they can quarantine themselves and get better, which I would personally prefer too. I'm not going to say, well, they don't have any PTO, so they have to come in here, because obviously if they do, they're going to get everybody infected. So I don't know. That was just a personal story I thought I'd share that came up in the workplace today. And they told us, you know, if you get sick and if you end up getting tested and you're positive, please to God, stay home, and then let us know that you were tested positive, and don't worry about sending us the paperwork right now. Just whenever you're better, after it's been a couple of weeks, just make sure you bring in some sort of, you know, test result paperwork, something that proves that. And then, you know, without question, we'll give you every hour that you lost on the job. And yeah, you'll be paid up in full. So anyway, let's see what I've got here next. So this is the time to be obsessively compulsive with your cleanliness. It's time for OCD. If you have the virus, okay, if you're walking around and you're carrying it, and if you know you have it, even if you don't know you have it, you're still equally as contagious as if you didn't know that you had it. But if you do have it, everything you touch will be contaminated for up to 3 days. That means everything, every doorknob, every place that you put your fingerprint on. I mean, it could be the edge of a table. It could be on the side of a wall as you're tiptoeing past something. It could be the towel that you're using to dry your hands off. You know, you name it. If you open up the dishwasher and you forgot to wash your hands, all of a sudden you've contaminated the dishwasher. So you just have to be extra careful to never, ever, ever touch your face. And I am a severe nail biter. I mean, when they say you touch your face more than 1,000 times a day, not only did I believe it, but I didn't think that was enough. I am constantly biting my nails all the time. And the last couple of weeks has been my own personal torture. It's weird because my fingernails are actually growing out. Like, there hasn't been any white on my fingernails since I was probably a kid. So it just looks really bizarre to see my fingernails actually growing out, because for my entire adult life, not once have I ever seen my fingernails actually growing from the base of my fingernail. But for the last couple of weeks, I've been extremely proactive at doing so. I've even worn Band-Aids on occasion, because there's a couple of parts of my hand that I like to bite up a little more than other parts. So I have to wrap not rubber bands. Did I say rubber bands? I meant Band-Aids. I think I did say Band-Aids. I don't know. But anyway, but yeah, if you have a nervous habit that includes biting your nails, you know, you've got to really work hard at that, because it only takes one time. Somebody who's contaminated touches one doorknob, or they touch one object, and you touch it, and then you instantly start biting your nails or whatever, you're going to get it. You're going to get it. You're going to get stuck with coronavirus. You're going to be miserable. You could be hospitalized. You could be incredibly sick. Or you might be completely asymptomatic and get all better. But either way, whether if you have it or not, just assume that everything that you touch is contaminated, first of all. And if you do touch the virus, everything after that object that you touched will be contaminated once you touch that object that is contaminated. So if you touch a doorknob that has coronavirus, the next 150 objects that your hands touch will be just as contaminated as that original doorknob. And it goes on and on and on up until the point where you wash your hands. So just because you wash your hands 3 times a day, it's not like brushing your teeth. It's, you know, you got to keep washing and washing and washing. I don't know, like maybe every, if you're not sitting at your desk at work or something like that, or if you're not touching your typical 5-6 objects when you're working, if you go beyond your desk, I would say, you know, definitely wash your hands or sanitize right before you leave. Don't touch your face as you touch everything else, but assume everything that you're touching before you touch your face again or before you sanitize again, everything that you're touching is contaminated. That's the best advice that I would have. Just assume that everything around you, everything, no matter how ridiculous it might be, if you open up like a toothbrush from a sealed package, the toothbrush, assume even that's contaminated. I mean, that's how crazy you should get, because if you get that crazy and you get that OCD, you're going to be very unlikely to catch it unless bad luck just catches up with you and you just end up breezing past somebody who's exhaling the same time you're inhaling, and boom, just like that, you might end up getting it. But at least for the sake of others around you, if you're OCD to the point where you're sterilizing your hands like crazy all the time, you're at least contributing to the to the inability for this virus to keep spreading. So, and that could protect your loved ones, your family, your friends, even strangers around you that you don't know, but I'm sure most of them are very good people. You know, if you're out in the grocery store, you know, there's grandparents that are out there that are shopping around you, and there's kids and you know, parents that have kids, and it goes on and on and on. So just trying to keep personal hygiene to the max when it comes to your hands. I mean, that's absolutely essential right now. So the faster we can drill that into our heads, the faster we can get rid of this and get back to normal, get back to nail biting, get back to worrying about other things that really don't ultimately matter, but we worry about it anyway. So, you know, I'll just leave that little tidbit there. But now this is, obviously you've probably read it by now, but New York City today, and this isn't an exact number, of course, it's an estimate, but New York City has come out today at 10 o'clock in the morning and confirmed that they have over 3,500 confirmed cases. Yesterday, when I went to bed, if I could be mistaken, but I think the number was somewhere around 1,500. I don't think it was over 1,500. 22 people have been confirmed as died from coronavirus in New York City alone. If you're from New York City, or if you know anybody in New York City and you want some further detail on this, the governor of New York, again, like I said, around 4 o'clock this afternoon, did a full press conference. He gave a speech and everything, and he detailed the statistics that are surrounding these cases. He breaks it down by borough, like Manhattan and Brooklyn and Queens and Staten Island and, you know, all Long Island, I think he even included. He included everything in the surrounding areas as far as how many people in each area of New York City was affected. So you should definitely go online and look that up if that directly affects you, or if it affects somebody that you know and you're worried about them. And that way you can at least communicate to them if they're not very news savvy. And the next thing I want to mention real quick is ventilators. So that's the thing they keep talking about in the news. How many ventilators are we stocking up on? If you've been watching the president giving his speech, and his daily speech actually, and he's taking questions from the press, a lot of them keep asking about ventilators. How many have you ordered? Well, they can't give solid numbers because they're ordering from tons of contractors, private contractors, and probably international suppliers. So they don't have an exact number on hand because I'm sure at this point they just keep collecting and collecting. So it's probably not possible to give them a nice solid number, although I think they should at least give them a round number. I mean, I've heard 5,000, I've heard 10,000, I don't know. It sounds like that Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, ordered, it was somewhere around 1,500, maybe 2,000, I think, that he ordered from a private company for the state of Florida, and they're in the process of delivering that order. But just think about this. When it comes to ventilators, I mean, they might be built in the USA. The ones that are built in the USA, we're definitely going to keep here. I mean, if there's another country, I mean, God forbid they're suffering badly, but there could be another country that might be calling one of the American companies that produces ventilators, and they might be begging for them to send some their way, but they might have to turn them away because we have a lot going on here in our country. Just like I think the last number I heard was 130 countries across the world are dealing with coronavirus right now. So virtually every country, certainly every developed country, and easily more than half of the undeveloped world are now dealing with this. So everybody needs ventilators. Everybody needs help. So when the press is complaining about us having a lack of ventilators on supply, or we're not ordering them fast enough, they're not factoring in the rest of the world. I mean, look at Germany, look at Italy. Okay, I didn't want to bring this up till the very end, but check out this map. This is the map. This is the map of the world dealing with coronavirus right now. And here's the numbers right here, clear as crystal. 242,000 cases have been confirmed. And this number is going to go up very fast, especially in the United States, because we finally have the supply chain covered when it comes to the tests for coronavirus. So we're going to see these numbers climb like really, really rapidly, especially over the next week. This time next week, where's the United States? Right now, we've confirmed 13,159 cases. I'm sure by this time next week, it's probably going to be way more than quadrupled. I mean, we might be flirting with, 65, 75,000. That's just my personal opinion. Because the more readily they become available, the more tests that are going to become positive. And I just think that the numbers are going to absolutely explode. But the press keeps pushing the government into telling us how many ventilators we have on supply, how many we're going to get, like how many do we need versus how many are we going to have available. Of course, those two numbers are very, very different. I mean, we're going to probably need hundreds of thousands, if not millions of ventilators in the foreseeable future, but we're not going to get anywhere near that in terms of supply. And the point I want to make is because the whole world is dealing with this. Look at this. I mean, every country is going to need ventilators. So, I mean, and, just because these countries have less than 100 doesn't mean that they might hit a hotspot and just absolutely explode. So, like, take Morocco, for example. There's 63 confirmed cases. It only takes just one person who's contaminated and they didn't know that they were contaminated, and they might have like a paper route, or they might work in a coffee shop or something, and within a couple of days, all of a sudden it just balloons to 1,000 people infected. And the big problem with coronavirus is that you can be contagious without symptoms for, I think they're estimating, around 4 days. And that's a really long time to walk around with no symptoms, because a lot of people who don't have symptoms, they don't really take extra care at keeping their hands clean. And that's why I stress that so heavily. Stay clean, keep your hands clean, because you're not doing that just to try to keep yourself from getting it, but you could already be contaminated, and everything you're touching, you're putting the virus onto for other people to get contaminated with. And that would be what would drive the entire world's population to be reduced drastically if everybody had that mentality. So definitely keep your hands clean as often as humanly possible. Especially, I would say, every time you realize you touch your face, at a bare minimum, sanitize your hands, or even better, wash your hands. And that is just to protect the people around you, just in case you might have caught it maybe a day ago or 2 days ago, and you haven't felt any symptoms yet, but nevertheless, you're still spreading the virus. Even breathing is spreading the virus to some degree. So yeah, when it comes to ventilators, I mean, come on, guys, in the press, just give our leaders a break. They're doing the best they can. They know what they're dealing with. They don't have to be constantly reminded that we need ventilators. I'm sure that they know perfectly well and perfectly clear that they need ventilators. I'm sure China is a huge supplier or a huge producer of ventilators, as well as many other countries. I'm sure Germany might be one of those countries that supplies the world with a lot of medical supplies in the medical industry. So, all right, let me go ahead and go back here. The airlines bailout, not something to spend too much time on. I really wish that Trump wouldn't be promising the airlines with a bailout right now. I think that when the dust settles, and they're predicting maybe up to 18 months from now, we'll finally have a vaccine and have this whole situation under control. I think that would be the appropriate time to start talking bailouts in the airline industry, because why are you going to bail out an industry that is very, very well known for spreading around disease just by simply traveling? I know the airlines, yes, they'll take a nasty hit from this. They already are. Some may even go bankrupt, but right now they must understand that keeping airplanes in the sky is not what the United States should be spending money on right now. What we need to be spending money on is food and ensuring that people can survive and people can get the medical help they need. And we're not going to be doing that by bailing out freaking industries. This is not the time for that. This is not this is a financial crisis, actually, but this isn't a financial crisis that's been driven by stupidity. This is a financial crisis that's been driven by Mother Nature. And we need to look very carefully at where we should be sending money to. Not to companies who are begging Congress because they've been stashing, wads of cash in politicians' pockets for decades, and now they're coming to them and say, "Hey, you owe us a favor." You know what I'm talking about? Pay for play, but it's not really, because it's not in the books and nobody's ever talked about it. But everybody knows how dirty Washington is. That's why they call it "Drain the Swamp," because Washington is freaking dirty. It's filthy with corruption, and the airlines, they need to just shut the hell up and let the American people be taken care of, not airline industries. And yes, I know there's hundreds of thousands of people who would be directly affected by this, millions, in fact, because people travel for their job. But clearly, you shouldn't be traveling right now. You should be hunkering down and staying put. So hopefully they will forget about bailing out the airline industries. I know how much that's going to hurt. It could potentially hurt the economy because people need the travel to spend money, and I mean, the airline industries, I'm sure they pay a boatload of money in taxes, and it's an essential tool to have in the 21st century. I understand that. But if, let's say, Delta or Southwest, if they end up filing bankruptcy and they disappear, trust me, there will be another company somewhere that will buy their fleet at a bargain, and they will revitalize that sector, and there will be the airline industry that could be reborn just with new names on the side of planes. Okay, so please don't worry about the airline industry's government. If you're listening to this, I know you're not, but everything that we say and do is recorded through the NSA anyway, so I'm sure somewhere maybe somebody heard that. I doubt it, but who knows. We could talk help next year. Exactly. So Uber Eats, I don't think that it's for every restaurant, but I think to some extent for restaurants that are contracted with Uber Eats, they're offering free delivery services. And that actually is a big deal because people right now who are losing their jobs, I don't think that they should be ordering food out necessarily, but you have to expect that if you're contracted with Uber Eats and you deliver food, I would expect to not get tips from a lot of people. And it's not because they're jerks. It's just because people are going to have to super conserve their money right now because we don't know how long this is going to last. People might be employed right now, but a week from now, their job might say, yeah, I know Apple promised you that we would keep paying you, but look, it's a means to an end. And the end has come and we can't pay you anymore. So we're going to have to furlough you for a while. So I would just say that as far as Uber Eats is concerned, I mean, I guess if you're starving, use them, but don't use the virus as an excuse to use Uber Eats without the intent of giving them at least some sort of a tip. Because remember, these people, at this point, they're making ends meet as it is. And they shouldn't have to be burdened with supplying you with takeout food when you're not going to tip them, especially when you already have a stockpile of food that you're sitting on and you're just using them as a way to get a cheap meal. I mean, don't do that. Only do it if you really, really need it. But nevertheless, that service is being offered through Uber Eats. And millennials, please, for the love of God, please stop going out. Quit. Stay home, lock yourself in, quit it. If you hate gaming like I do, start gaming. At this point, there's something there for everybody. There's something for everybody. What is this game called? Check this out. Okay, so if you're not much of a video gamer, look at this. Okay, I will say first of all, you have to get a VR headset to be able to play this, but this is an amazing game that I noticed that I would straight up get even a bootleg VR headset just to get a chance to check out this game. But it's called Aircar. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Aircar, but this thing is insane. It just goes to show that there's something out there for potentially anyone. I guess if you're a sci-fi fan, you're probably a gamer, but there's exceptions like me. I'm a big sci-fi fan, but I'm not a big gamer by any means. The only game that I own is GTA 5, and I still only exclusively have the Xbox 360 console, so that should tell you enough. But anyway, this game is ridiculously amazing. Check this out. So you wear VR goggles, and you're using the game, I guess, by using like a remote stick. I'm not too familiar with VR technology exactly, but this thing is really freaking cool. It's a free game, by the way. This is free. I'm not 100%, but I think it's on Steam for free, maybe. It's somewhere on a platform for free. But you're sitting in this airship, and you're wearing, the person that's showing this video, they're showing it through a VR headset. So the person that's playing this game, if they turn their head to the left, it actually shows the left of their viewing areas. But it's definitely really cool. Let me see here. Yeah, I thought it started at the beginning, but yeah, see, like when you first start in this thing, you're there, like obviously they're moving their head, they're looking at the controls and stuff, but it's like you're actually in it. And I've read reviews on this game, which is, it's a very simple type of game, relatively speaking. There's no levels, there's no battles, nothing like that. You just fly around this city in this vehicle, but it's raining. It looks, I don't know, it looks very future city-ish as far as the weather's concerned, or esque. But it's really cool to watch. It's really amazing. And they get down near the street level at some points. It looks like that he's landing on landing platforms that are up on the skyscrapers. It's really neat. Let me see before I continue into the other content that I was wanting to really get into. I just wanted to show one flyby in the city. It looks like in this one, oh yeah, see, look, all landing pads. So they're actually showing certain elements of the game that they've upgraded recently, relatively recently, 2019 recently. But I want to see them flying through the city. I apologize here. I was not prepared for this at all. But it's really cool. I mean, check this out. This is amazing. I heard you can get dizzy playing this. I heard that it really messes with your equilibrium. Clearly, it would. But this thing is free. So if you want to drop like $50 and get just some really cheap VR headset, I don't know if that's recommended for something like this, but I mean, even like I heard that even Google, I don't know if you can get this game on your smartphone, but even Google had those cardboard headsets that you can get for like $10, and you put your smartphone into it, and it acts just like any other VR headset, and you just plug earbuds into your head and just plug it into your phone, and you probably could do the same thing here. The only thing you'll need is like a hand stick, like a wand or something. I guess something like the Nintendo Wii maybe, to be able to control your flying capabilities and your, elevating yourself up and down and whatnot. But anyway, if you're not a big gamer and you're a millennial and you're trapped in your house and you hate being trapped in your house and you're either a socialite or you're just really outgoing, give this thing a try. I mean, hell, if I had this thing, I'd probably be glued to it for at least 12 hours. I mean, whenever I played games like GTA, for example, the map is so huge. I just want to drive up and down every single street and just take a look at what's around. I mean, that's just how I am. I'll waste like 15 hours just driving around, just checking out the scenery and seeing what all's around. But anyway, that's something really cool that you could get into. Plus, you can get an audiobook. You can start doing that. You can start reading books. You can get old-fashioned and start reading books. You can keep a journal. You can write about the situation. You can even do what I'm doing. Just set up a YouTube channel and start talking about what's going on. And, just if you don't have a hobby that'll keep you occupied inside your house, find one. Get online. Look for things you can do. Because millennials, that's what the government keeps telling us, or well, the White House specifically, but they keep telling us that millennials, they are the crucial generation that will stop the spread of this virus. And if they keep going out to bars and if they keep trying to find ways to slip through the system and get out there and be social still, it's only going to make it worse and worse and worse. The economy is going to get worse. They're going to keep losing their own jobs, and we're not going to get through this in a timely fashion. And even I made a note of this at my work there, and this happened just today. We use Microsoft Teams. It's like the only way I can describe it is like a chat room. But we use it to chat amongst ourselves because we're trying to roll out work from home. I mean, to talk about good timing, right? But we use Microsoft Teams to communicate around the office. We're encouraged not to get up and talk to each other right now because we're trying to phase in work from home, especially with COVID-19. I mean, we're trying to fast track that and push people out of the building and out at their homes to start working from home. But I have millennial coworkers that were on this platform that were telling us which bars and restaurants in the local area that they noticed from the night before, or they've read about online, or they heard on social media that were still open, and they're not enforcing the 10-person rule. So now in Florida, it's not a 10-person rule maximum. It's not like an executive order or anything at the moment. Now, I would hope Ron DeSantis makes something like that very soon, because he dropped the ball big time by allowing spring break to happen. I cannot believe he did that. So he's got a lot of work to do as far as getting the millennials in Florida under control. But I didn't say anything on Teams because I don't want to be that jerk and that's going to try to ruin what little fun that they should be having right now. But I just had to look at it and shake my head and be like, why are you going out right now? You can't be trying to cheat the system right now. You have to pretend that coronavirus is existing on every single object and surface that you lay your hands on, no matter what. And they just don't seem to care. And when you get drunk, you lean into people, you hug people, you just don't care. You don't care about what other people might be carrying with them. So if you're a millennial, I mean, please find something else to do. Find something that's going to keep you indoors. Go on Netflix, find an awesome series to watch. I mean, like, for example, 2 weeks ago, I got through it in a weekend because they only have 2 seasons. They're actually rolling out the 3rd season this month. But there's a show called Westworld. The first season was unreal, crazy, amazing. Got through the second season. By the time the end of the season approached, I was like, man, this is getting a little too stupid. Just my own opinion. It's just not my cup of tea anymore. It started out really crazy awesome, but another show that I'm considering looking into is a show called Black Sails. It was on Showtime, and it was like a pirate show. So I don't know if they still show it anymore. When I stopped watching it was like season 3 maybe, and it actually was surprisingly really good. So if you like pirate type movies or movies based in like the 1700s, things like that, Pirates of the Caribbean kind of flair to it in a way without all the colorful theatrics that Disney likes to put on. That was a good show to follow. So, I mean, if they're still showing new episodes, I would imagine by now they must be on like season 5 or 6. But or bring back an old series that you like Breaking Bad, even House. I mean, that was a show that I watched when I was like in my early 20s, and I kind of watched it progress all the way through to the end. And yeah, if you try to binge watch that, that might take you to the end of the coronavirus pandemic. My apologies, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there to watch, and a lot of things to keep yourself occupied without having to leave your house, especially in the 21st century. I don't know how people in the year 1918 with the Spanish flu, I don't know how they would have been able to cope with coronavirus with all this going around, and you have to stay inside your homes with all these executive orders and laws and ordinances and curfews and all this stuff. I mean, what did they have back then? They had old-fashioned newspapers, they had yarn, they had like cotton to make clothes with, and I don't know, your guess is as good as mine. Maybe checkers, chess. That was about it. So, anyway, yeah, I think the people who are going to be doing the best in this situation are the gamers. I mean, I've seen your stuff on YouTube. I've seen Fortnite, and I've seen the way that they behave. They sit in their room by themselves. They have the headset on, and they are just immersed into this whole world that 99 other people, I guess in the case of Fortnite, are engaged in. And you got your own team going in there, and yeah, I mean, talk about letting hours just fall off the clock. But I mean, yeah, you can still be social and engaged with people in the gaming world. I mean, by far better now more than ever. So anyway, find a hobby, millennials. Please stay out of public right now. Stay out of public. Don't go to fast food. Even if they're handing you stuff through the window, if you're paying cash, they're giving you change with coronavirus on it, okay? Or the person that was in front of you in the line, when they gave them their card, that card had coronavirus on it, and they're not washing their hands in between every single transaction. So when they hand you your bag of food, the outside of that bag that they touched has coronavirus all over it. And when you eat fast food, you tend to use your hands when you eat, like when you eat a hamburger or a chicken sandwich or a filet of fish from McDonald's or something. So if you're in a hurry, you're not going to take the precaution. Well, I hope you do, but a lot of millennials won't, of sanitizing their hands or washing their hands before they unwrap their food and they take a bite. And even if they wash their hands in that situation, or they sanitize their hands, and then they go to open the bag, then they go to open the wrappers, well, you just got the virus right back on you again because you didn't open everything up first and then clean your hands off before you touched your food. So just some common sense there. I mean, come on. So anyway, let's see, what do I got left? Just a couple of little quick notes before I get into the articles. Uber and Lyft are suspending rides because of the 6 feet around each person rule. So if you're looking for a Lyft or an Uber ride, you might be hard pressed to find one because it sounds like the platform is starting to suspend their services for picking up people. So you might start to see something else kind of climb out of this in terms of maybe social media taking the initiative, saying that, hey, I keep myself extremely clean. I was testing negative. Let's say this is like 3 months from now. And you know, I'm offering rides around the neighborhood for like $5 a ride or something. You know, you might start to see people try to find ways to earn money. Like I said, people who are being furloughed at their restaurant jobs, being a server or at a retail store, they're going to have to try to get creative to find a way to make money, because the money that I'm about to mention that Congress had passed and the president signed, that's going to go out into the American population to allow us to try to stay above water, those who are affected by this, it's not enough money by any means. If this thing's going to last for up to 18 months, or even if the worst of it lasts until July, the amount of money that they're offering us is not nearly enough to get you until July. Trust me, not even close. And yeah, DeSantis announced the carelessness of spring breakers. He did officially tell everyone, quote unquote, parties over. Spring break is going to be here next year. Just go home. Let's ride out this. Let's get through this nightmare that we're dealing with, because if not, it's only going to get worse. But to be honest, I think the damage is already done. People who were infected with coronavirus that weren't feeling the symptoms yet were crowding on the beach. And they were spreading it all over the place. So, yeah. I mean, I don't want to put all that solely on the shoulders of our governor, but man, I loved Ron DeSantis when he first became governor. I mean, he was getting lots of things done right away. I won't get into all that because I have bigger things to talk about. But I mean, he had that commercial during his campaign that was really popular. He was a Trump supporter. I think Trump might have even endorsed him at some point. But he had a political video with his kids. He has like a 4 and a 5-year-old, and they were using like these cardboard building blocks to like build this wall. And he's like, "What did I teach you, kids?" And they say, "Build the wall." It was hilarious. It was like just these like cardboard brick shaped building blocks that they were building across their living room. It was hilarious. But anyway, if you're not a conservative, I do apologize for that, but I personally thought it was funny. Even though we're way long past that. I mean, coronavirus is more important than politics at this point, which is why that I'm very heavily looking at all different news outlets, because just sticking to the ones that I'm familiar with is definitely not good enough. I mean, you definitely have to stay fair on both sides when it comes to this situation. And it looks like everybody is being very fair, very mindful, very practical, using a lot of common sense, and that's a really good thing. Even Ilhan Omar, who is that congresswoman from Minnesota that's always buried deep in controversy. She may have married her brother. I mean, they're investigating her on like campaign finance issues, I think, like a number of things that are going on around her. And she praised the president today on Twitter, commending him for the job that he's doing combating coronavirus. I mean, she'd be one of the last people. If you're familiar with politics, that would be just like Ocasio-Cortez praising Trump for handling the coronavirus. I mean, I couldn't imagine. You know, I guess dogs and cats are sleeping together now out on the street. I mean, that's how crazy it really seems to be getting, because, you know, the right and the left politically are poles apart. And for somebody who is so far left wing to come out and praise the president for what a good job that he's doing, I mean, that's, I don't know, the tide might be turning. We might finally be, you know, getting together. And it might have to take a pandemic of this mass proportion to bring our culture together, to bring America back together again. Get rid of politics finally, and let's start being human beings together. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into these articles here. As it's starting to get dark outside, I've noticed. I think I've been ranting and raving here for going on 42 minutes. Holy crap. Just now getting into the articles. So that's why I've selected fewer this time, because the more used to doing these videos, I get a little more used to just ranting and going on and on, but hopefully you can bear through it. And all right, I'll try to stick to the stories the best I can. But now we can find out who's eligible for the coronavirus checks. And the Senate GOP has just released details to that effect. The direct payments to many Americans will be means tested based on their income. And I will show the numbers. I am definitely not happy with them at all. I think that the income is targeted way too high. So yes, I might briefly jump out of the article to, you know, to take a crack at it. But the direct cash payment plan to help Americans hurt by the coronavirus pandemic, unveiled by Senate Republicans Thursday night, would send checks of up to $1,200 per person, and payments would be based on income. Under the plan, the details of which were revealed on the Senate floor by Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who is a Republican of Kentucky, individuals making up to $75,000 annually would be eligible for a $1,200 check from the federal government. Married couples who filed their taxes jointly must make less than $150,000 to qualify for their payment, which would be $2,400. From there, according to McConnell's proposal, the payments decrease. For individuals, the sum of the payment falls by $5 for each $100 earned over $75. The payment phases out entirely for individuals making more than $99,000 annually, meaning people who make more than that will not receive any money from the federal government, according to the proposal. For married couples earning more than $150,000, the payment also declines gradually and phases out completely for couples making more than $198,000 an hour, according to the plan. Individuals and couples with children are eligible for an additional $500 per each child they have. And now you can see quite clearly why I have a serious issue with this. I'm not going to tell you how much money that I make at my job, but I will at least tell you that I make hourly money and not salary. So that should tell you enough. And I think that if somebody is making more, and I'll just throw out a number that I think is sensible, if somebody is making more than $45,000 a year, they should not be entitled to any government assistance whatsoever, even if they suddenly lose their job overnight. Yes, $45,000 in some cases can be very difficult to deal with depending on where you live in the country. So they should have considered that in a place where the average rent is X amount of money. So if you live in a certain place that's expensive, but you work at Starbucks to help, give rich people their coffee, but you live in that community nevertheless. Yes, if you make maybe $50,000 a year, you should still be entitled to this. But the vast majority of Americans who make $45,000 a year or more, they're going to be okay. And if they're not going to be okay, then they really should start checking their finances. Why did you buy that really stupid expensive car? Why are you driving around in a brand new Cadillac and you make $60,000 a year? Maybe you shouldn't have made that stupid decision. Why in the hell are you $10,000 in credit card debt? Why did you buy a house that's 3,500 square feet and you only have one kid? I mean, just these bonehead decisions that this situation won't fix anyway. $1,200 given to a person who makes $70,000 a year. Do you really think $1,200 is going to do anything for them? Nothing. It won't do anything. That's what makes me mad about this. If somebody makes less than $45,000 a year, then a $1,200 check could get their rent paid. It could keep them in their home for a month longer. And this just frustrates me to no end because it shows how out of touch that Congress is from the American population. If somebody's making $70,000 a year and you're living paycheck to paycheck, then that means that you are absolutely horrible with your money. You are an idiot with your money, and you deserve to be called an idiot for the way that you're managing your finances. I mean, I am so tempted to tell you how much that I make just because of the fact that I can still save money outside of the check that I earned. I mean, I've been able to purchase a couple of firearms. I've been able to take my daughter out to eat on several occasions per month. Anytime she sees something at the store that she wants, and if she's been well behaved and her grades are up, I'll make sure she gets it. We get to go places. We get to go shopping on occasion. But to anybody else who's living the lifestyle that they think that they're entitled to live, they are well beyond their means. I mean, well beyond their means. I don't have any credit card debt. The only debt that I have, to be honest, is student loan debt, which, that's for an entirely different, not just a different video, but an entirely different platform. But there's so many other people in that boat too. I mean, I'm not even going to get into that, but I mean, if you can't afford, if you're going to risk losing your job, and I understand if this happens by the millions, this will hurt the economy drastically. But if you have a car you're paying $600 a month on your car payment for, you live in a property, or you live in a place where your mortgage is $1,000 a month, or your rent is like $1,500 a month, for example, you stack it all on top of each other. $1,200 is not going to get you anything. Maybe it will get your food and your essentials and all that restocked, and maybe you might be able to cover a portion of your rent with it. But people who make $75,000 a year, I have zero sympathy for, because if I made anywhere close to that, I would have a giant nest egg, because I am extremely conservative with my money. I am absolutely a tightwad. I'm proud to say it. I shop at Goodwill. I shop at Aldi. I mean, I make sure that I stay as close to the bottom of my means as possible, just to have that extra money left over at the end that I can save and put away for things like this. For example, I've probably got, I would estimate, I mean, if it was me by myself, I mean, there's 3 people I have to worry about where I live. We comfortably, I would say comfortably, without rationing it carefully, I comfortably have, between the 3 of us, at least a 2-month food supply, at least. And the reason I have that is because I started getting ready for this at the end of January, when that podcaster I told you about, Tim Pool, started talking about it and said, if you need to get food, if you don't have a big stockpile of a minimum of 2 weeks worth of food, get it now. And I listened. And me, little me, who makes nowhere near $75,000 a year, I mean, I'll actually go out and just say I don't even make half of that per year, and I work full time. And I was still able to procure 2 months worth of food between three different people, and that includes, well, I guess it doesn't include water. I ended up being able to procure about 52 gallons of water, and that's what I have stashed, sealed up and stashed. I also was able to supply my two cats with 4 months of cat food. I also have two firearms, one that was actually pretty expensive that I ended up buying just coincidentally back in, I think it was early January that I actually got it. I mean, it's my dream gun. I'm so glad I have it, especially now that gun stores are empty. The only thing I'm waiting on is the ammunition, and I checked on UPS.com. It should be showing up tomorrow, I hope. But I am very unhappy with the way they handled this. I mean, people are making that much money. That is absolutely ridiculous. This should be aimed toward waiters, waitresses, people in retail, people working in shopping malls that make like $12 an hour, $13 an hour, $15 an hour. It should be geared toward those people, not people who are making $75,000 a year. $1,200 isn't going to do anything. I mean, to a lot of these folks, that's going to cover what, like their credit card payment? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Now, obviously, they're not going to use that toward their rent because HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, has suspended the foreclosures and the evictions that would otherwise be taking place. But I mean, that's a domino effect because whoever owns the house that you're not paying the rent for, either they have a mortgage they have to pay for, or they have other obligations that they have to satisfy. And if you're not paying them, they're not paying whoever they owe money to, and the whole house of cards comes crashing down. And next thing you know, you've got some private business that owns 6,000 properties that's going to be kicking you out because they don't care, because they've got 6,000 properties to worry about. They're a business. They're not a local landlord that you have given your rent to. But yeah, I'm gonna have to skip past this because this is gonna keep sending me off on this wild rant. I am very unhappy with this. I am very, very unhappy with this. This is gonna do nothing good for our economy whatsoever. I mean, I'll say it once more: people who make 75 grand a year they do not deserve an ounce of help. And if you make that much money per year, then I apologize for that. But on the other hand, look at all the stuff that you're paying for. Do you have a new iPhone? Do you have premium cable? Do you have a $500 a month car payment? In which, if you do, you're going to have full coverage car insurance, which is going to rack you up like what, another $200, $300 plus dollars. I mean, just keep stacking it and stacking it. Do you have credit card payments that you're having to pay for? Is your house at least 2,500 square feet and you live in a hot climate or a cold climate? Maybe you should have gotten a house that was 1,000 square feet instead. I know it's all, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but we didn't see this coming, yada, yada, yada. But I don't know. I mean, and I think it was a timing issue. I don't think they actually had time to actually roll all of this out. So they just had to blanket everybody with $1,200. And I know it's more than just keeping people alive. I know they want to stimulate the economy as quickly as possible. But if everybody is closed and everybody suddenly gets a $1,200 check in the mail, what do you think that a lot of people are going to do, especially millennials? Hey, check this out. I got $1,200 in the mail. Hell yeah, let's go party. Let's go shopping. Let's go out, and I don't know if anything's open, but we're going to find them if they are open. It's not going to help anything. So, I mean, suspending the mortgage payments and the evictions and things like that, that is a positive thing in the short term, as long as people will have the ability to make it current. And the government can't just wipe those out because there's a money trail for everything. So anyway, all right, I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get too crazy with it, but let's move on to the next thing here, shall we? Nearly 40% of those hospitalized with coronavirus are younger than 54. This is serious business because they keep telling us that the vast, vast majority of people who are hospitalized are over the age of 65. Well, this doesn't seem to be incredibly accurate as far as what the government is telling us, if ABC News is correct at least. As many spring breakers are still seen ignoring social distancing on the beaches of Florida, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is saying that more younger people than initially thought are getting seriously ill due to the novel coronavirus. Data released Wednesday night by the CDC shows that of the 508 patients known to have been hospitalized in the U.S. for COVID-19, about 20% of those were ages 20 to 44, and another 18% were between the ages of 45 and 54. Excuse me. However, COVID-19, look at that picture. However, COVID-19 is still significantly more dangerous in older patients, as 80% of deaths associated with coronavirus are adults over the age of 65. I'm having I guess not really a cocktail really. I am drinking orange juice with a splash of rum, so that orange juice is kind of making my throat a little froggy. I don't have coronavirus, at least I don't think I do, but even if I do, I am crazy OCD right now with my hands. Less than 1% of coronavirus deaths were among patients. Kitty, come on. My cat just jumped on the keyboard. I hope she didn't screw anything up. Kitty, chill. Just chill. Less than 1% of coronavirus deaths were among patients aged 20 to 54, and 0 patients under the age of 19 have died from the virus, the CDC report said. These numbers don't provide the full context of underlying medical conditions in these patients. And there you go, there's another view. That's Clearwater Beach. I live right down the road from there. It's not the primary beach I visit, but it is a beach that I go to visit if I have friends or loved ones or somebody visiting me that might want to go explore. Yeah, that looks pretty normal, actually. I mean, that doesn't look like full-on spring break like this one. I mean, that one's crazy. Where is that? Must be Miami. No, that's in Clearwater, too. Holy crap. Yeah, the umbrellas look familiar because there's a business. There's a lifeguard shack, but in between, like around one of these lifeguard shacks, you'll see like this giant pile of these umbrellas and these little like tent things that you lay inside that are just stacked up every morning, and you go over there and you rent one from them for like $10. So that is crazy. That's a lot of people showing up. Thank God that I'm not going out there, even though I literally live 2 miles from the beach. 2 miles. I live from the main road that I live 1 traffic light away from. It's 3 traffic lights down a hill and right over a little mini bridge, and then I'm right there on the barrier islands. So it would be Indian Shores. That's what I live nearest to. But I am not going out there. I mean, that looks like a breeding ground for coronavirus. But they are closing Clearwater Beach effective Monday, I think they said. I don't know why they didn't say effective immediately, but whatever. It's because tourism is very important in Florida. Anyway, the world's fastest supercomputer identified chemicals that could stop coronavirus from spreading, a crucial step toward a vaccine. This is an awesome article, and it came from CNN, who I personally cannot stand, but this is awesome. The novel coronavirus presents an unprecedented challenge for scientists. The speed at which the virus spreads means they must accelerate their research. But this is what the world's fastest supercomputer was built for. Summit, IBM's supercomputer, equipped with the brain of AI, ran thousands of simulations to analyze which drug compounds may effectively stop the virus from infecting host cells. The supercomputer identified 77 of them. It is a promising step toward creating the most effective vaccine. Researchers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory published their findings in the journal ChemRxiv. Summit was commissioned by the U.S. Department of Energy in 2014 for the purpose it's serving now, solving the world's problems. It's got the power of 200 petaflops, which means that it has the computing speed of 200 quadrillion calculations per second, aka it's 1 million times more powerful than the fastest laptop. And to put this into perspective, because I do have a little bit of an IT background, I mean, clearly these are server racks, or they're racks in general. But if you look at this, like if you see every object in here, imagine that's like it's a desktop PC, like a computer tower. And that's essentially what these things are. I'm sure each one is just packed to the gills with RAM and with other memory. But there's like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I would say 10. I'm sure there's 10 in each one, so there's 20 in each column here. And you can just follow them all the way down. That's a lot of computers. And that's just one row. And there's another row here on this side. Oh wait, no there's not. No there's not. It doesn't appear so. Maybe there is. It looks like they're like back to back kind of. But then there's another row that goes there that's this long. Then there's another one that long, and that one, that one, that one, that one. So clearly it is a hell of a computer. At its station in Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, Summit has identified patterns in cellular systems that precede Alzheimer's, analyzed genes that contribute to traits like opioid addiction, and predicted extreme weather based on climate situations. Viruses infect host cells by injecting them with a spike of genetic material. Summit's job is to find drug compounds that could bind to that spike and potentially stop the spread. Oak Ridge researcher Nicholas Smith created a model of the coronavirus spike based on research published in January. With Summit, he simulated how the atoms and particles in the viral protein would react to different compounds. The supercomputer ran simulations of over 8,000 compounds that could bind to the spike protein of the virus, which could limit its ability to spread to host cells. Summit identified 77 of them and ranked them based on how likely they were to bind to the spike. So what's next? The team will run the simulations on Summit again, using a more accurate model of the coronavirus's spike that was published this month. For all of its power, though, Summit can only do so much. It provided the first step in analysis, identifying promising compounds. Experimental studies are required next to prove which chemicals work the best. Quote, "Our results don't mean that we have found a cure or treatment for the coronavirus," said Jeremy Smith, director of the University of Tennessee, Oak Ridge National Laboratory Center of Molecular Biophysics, in a statement. That was a mouthful. But the findings could inform future studies, and those studies are necessary to create the most effective coronavirus vaccine. Only then will we know whether any of them exhibit the characteristics needed to mitigate this virus. And that's the end of that article. Incredible story. I love that story. I love technology working to stop this spread. That's amazing, especially when it comes to computers. It's just incredible. Experimental drug holds promise for treating the coronavirus. At least 2 hospitalized patients who got the drug, remdesivir, started to feel better the next day. Clinical trial results expected in late April. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen this in the news. I was watching just the cable television news, and they kept bringing this up. There are early signs that an experimental treatment for people who become very sick from the coronavirus may start working within 24 hours of the first dose. The treatment, an antiviral therapy called remdesivir, is thought to work by blocking the virus from producing itself in the body. It basically stops the production of the virus. Dr. Gregory Poland, an infectious disease expert and director of the Mayo Clinic's vaccine research group in Rochester, Minnesota, told NBC News. Remdesivir is one of the potential treatments mentioned by President Donald Trump during a press briefing on Thursday. He announced that federal health officials are removing barriers in attempts to roll out treatments as fast as possible. Preliminarily, it seems at least 2 hospitalized patients who received remdesivir started to feel better the next day. Chris Kane, age 55, was diagnosed with the coronavirus and hospitalized at Providence Regional Medical Center in Everett, Washington this month. He was really sick, his wife, Susan Kane, told NBC News. They put him on oxygen right away. His doctors decided to try remdesivir after it had shown promise in at least one earlier patient. The unidentified man who is the one earlier patient, it was actually an identified man who became the first person in the United States to be diagnosed with the coronavirus. Within a week of being admitted to the hospital, the man's condition deteriorated. His physicians, including the doctor who would later treat Chris Kane, worked with the federal health authorities to try remdesivir through what's called compassionate use, reserved for unapproved drugs in specific potentially life-saving situations. Quote, treatment with intravenous remdesivir was initiated on the evening of day 7, end quote, that they wrote. On day 8, the man's condition started to improve. He was able to be taken off the ventilator and got his appetite back. His fever resolved and his cough slowly dissipated. But questions remain about the quick recovery. Was it the drug that led to the improvement? Or would the man have gotten better the next day anyway? Susan Kane said remdesivir appeared to work quickly for her husband too. On the very next day, he said, I think it's lifting. I think I'm starting to feel better, she recalled. Chris Kane is now home, and although he still gets winded easily, he is improving, according to his wife. We are 100,000% convinced that the remdesivir turned things around for him, Susan Kane said. Of course, she's not a medical expert, but she swears by it, the husband's wife. In partnership with Gilead, the spokesman said up to 1,000 patients will be enrolled in the clinical trial. Patients are slowly being recruited into the trials, not only in Washington, but also in the University of Nebraska Medical Center and Emory Vaccine Center in Atlanta. And there you have it. There is some promise coming down the pike with a potential vaccine or something to help people get better at least. And this one, a little more ominous, but coronavirus will radically alter the United States. And this one I didn't highlight because I figured I would just read until I pretty much figured out that I covered the most important parts of it. But and this also, it's not an opinion piece. I mean, it is filed under health, but it's written in a story-like fashion. I know there's a word for it in the media, but I can't quite put my finger on it. But when Jason Christie, chief of pulmonary medicine at Penn Medicine, got projections on how many coronavirus patients might soon be flocking to his Philadelphia hospital, he said he felt physically ill. My frontline providers, we were speaking about it in the Situation Report last night, and their voices cracked, Christie said on Wednesday. They saw how quickly the surge would overwhelm the system, forcing doctors to make impossible choices, which patients would get ventilators and beds, and which ones would die. They were terrified, and that was the best case scenario. Experts around the country have been churning out model after model, marshaling every tool from math, medicine, science, and history to try to predict the coming chaos unleashed by the new coronavirus and to make preparations. At the heart of their algorithms is a scary but empowering truth. What happens next depends largely on us, our government, politicians, health institutions, and in particular 328 million inhabitants of this country, all making tiny decisions on a daily basis with outsized consequences for our collective future. In the worst case scenario, America is on a trajectory toward 1.1 million deaths. That model envisions the sick pouring into hospitals, overwhelming even makeshift beds in parking lot tents. Doctors would have to make agonizing decisions about who gets scarce resources. Shortages of frontline clinicians would worsen as they get infected, some dying alongside their patients. Trust in government, already tenuous, would erode further. That grim scenario is by no means a foregone conclusion, as demonstrated by countries like South Korea, which has reduced its new cases a day from hundreds to dozens with aggressive tips to bolster their health system. If Americans embrace drastic restrictions and school closures, for instance, we could see a death toll closer to thousands and breathe a national sigh of relief as we prepare for a grueling but surmountable road ahead. But there is an alarming new model. Doing that will require Americans to, quote, flatten the curve, end quote, and we've heard that a lot in press briefings. Slowing the spread of the contagion so it doesn't overwhelm a healthcare system with finite resources. That phrase has become ubiquitous in our national conversation. But what experts have not always made clear is that by applying all that downward pressure on the curve, by canceling public gatherings, closing schools, quarantining in the sick, and enforcing social distancing, you elongate the curve, stretching it out over a longer period of time. Success means a longer, though less catastrophic, fight against the coronavirus, and it is unclear whether Americans who built this country on ideals of independence and individual rights would be willing to endure such harsh restrictions on their lives for months, let alone for a year or more. Could you imagine that? Not legally being allowed to go to a restaurant for an entire year? I mean, when I was a kid, not to put any hurt on my parents or anything, but we went through quite a bit of period of time where we wouldn't go out to eat for an entire year just because we couldn't afford to. So I've been there before. Most people probably haven't, but we might be facing that future, whether if you're rich or poor. This month began with U.S. officials recommending actions such as hand washing and social distancing. By Sunday, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was warning against gatherings of 50-plus people. By Monday, President Trump had made an abrupt turn from encouraging Americans to go on with their lives to urging them to work from home, not meet in groups of more than 10, and calling on local officials to close schools, bars, and restaurants. And all right, I'll just wrap up with these next two paragraphs here. This is on, by the way, it's on WashingtonPost.com. And if you're listening to this, it's WashingtonPost.com/health/2020/03/19/coronavirus-projections-US/ or / I don't know. Just depends on it depends on what teacher you had that told you that. Trump's hidden shift was drifted by an alarming new scientific model developed by British epidemiologists and shared with the White House. The scientists bluntly stated the coronavirus is the most serious respiratory virus since the 1918 flu pandemic. If no action to limit the viral spread were taken, as many as 2.2 million in the United States could die over the course of the pandemic, according to the epidemiologist Neil Ferguson and others at the Imperial College COVID-19 response team. Adopting some mitigation strategies to slow the pandemic, such as isolating those suspected of being infected and social distancing of the elderly, only cuts the death toll in half to 1.1 million, although it would also reduce demand for health services by 2/3. And I will go ahead and cut it there. There is a little bit left to the article, but if you want to read further into this, it is available on WashingtonPost.com. The next article, every single individual must stay home. This is Italy's coronavirus surge straining hospitals. Daniela De Rosa, a 43-year-old veterinarian in Italy's southwest Campania region, made a video message over the weekend as she was hospitalized with COVID-19. Her video plea has gathered much attention in Italy, which has just surpassed China in the number of reported deaths from the new coronavirus. I've been in isolation in a hospital room for so many days I've lost count, she says. I have no contact with anyone other than doctors twice a day. Very few people understand what's happening. I want people to see that I'm suffering. De Rosa continues. Every single individual must stay home and not endanger the lives of others, she insists. Since the video was shared on Facebook last Sunday, it has racked up more than 11 million views. That is massive for Facebook. As of Thursday afternoon, Italy has registered 41,035 diagnoses of the coronavirus and 3,405 deaths. The death toll is now higher than China's no COVID-19 deaths of over 3,200. Earlier this month, Italy became the first Western country to launch a nationwide lockdown to contain the outbreak, but despite strict measures, the number of cases continues to rise. Italy has a universal healthcare system, but now its hospitals and medical staff are overwhelmed, prompting anguished debate. The Italian College of Anesthesia, Analgesia, Resuscitation, and Intensive Care has issued guidelines for what it calls a, quote, catastrophic medicine-like scenario. The college put it starkly. Given the serious shortage of health resources, patients with the, quote, best chance of success and hope of life, end quote, should have access to intensive care, the organization says. So, quoting, if you have a 99-year-old male or a female patient, that's a patient with a lot of diseases. And then you have a young kid that needs to be intubated and you only have one ventilator. I mean, you're not going to toss the coin, says Carlo Vitelli, a surgeon and an oncologist in Rome. And then the article continues a little bit more, but that's essentially the gist of it. So they're dealing with a lot. I mean, and they have a nationalized healthcare system, and that will get to that point where it doesn't matter, how old or young you. Well, I guess it would matter in that circumstance. If you have the best shot of a longer life, they're going to give everything to you. And if you've lived what they determine a decently long life, then you're expendable. But let's hope it doesn't get that bad here. Vice President Pence, COVID-19 testing expands to tens of thousands every day in the United States. This is on OANN.com, One American News Network, OAN. Vice President Mike Pence has highlighted his latest efforts to expand the scope of coronavirus testing across the U.S. on Thursday. The Vice President confirmed testing kits are now available in all 50 states. He attributed this availability to medical companies' public-private partnerships, which were previously secured by President Donald Trump. However, Pence added not everyone should test for the virus. It's important for every American to remember that if you don't have symptoms, you shouldn't need to get the test. According to the Vice President, all coronavirus cases are now being reported directly to the CDC, which will closely monitor the latest developments of the outbreak. I'm pleased to receive a report today that tens of thousands of tests are being performed every day, stated Pence. We want to make sure that testing is available for people who have symptoms or a genuine concern about having been exposed to someone with the coronavirus. The Vice President also said the federal government now has a clear understanding of how to fight the virus based off incoming data and the latest medical research. So that's it's a glimmer of hope there. So, but also at the same time, you're going to see numbers like we haven't seen yet by any stretch. I mean, I think that the number of infected is going to explode. By this time next week, by next Thursday, let's see, what kind of prediction should I come up with? By March the 26th, I will bet that the United States will surpass 100,000 infected. That's just my honest guess, but hopefully it won't be, but I think we're heading that way. So, grocery shopping, this is the last one because this is the map that I had shown earlier. But grocery shopping during the coronavirus pandemic, how do you stay safe? And this is really important. I mean, this affects me too because, you know, I love drinking milk. I love having orange juice, and you know, those aren't things that I can stockpile for months or years. So I may want to take the risk and go to the grocery store and maybe try to get a bottle of orange juice, or if I'm lucky, a gallon of milk. So I figured I might show this to the rest of you since I was trying to find this for myself, because I've been out of the grocery stores for, it'll be a week tomorrow, and I don't want to go anywhere in the foreseeable future. I'm probably going to buzz my hair this weekend because I'm due for a haircut, and either my hair salon, my barber shop, either that's closed. Like I said in a previous video, I go to Hair Cuttery. Okay, so it's just kind of a one-stop shop when it comes to getting haircuts and styling your hair and whatnot. But I assume that they're closed, and I should, because even if they're open, I just don't want to take the risk. I mean, I'd rather go around with a buzzed hair or a buzzed haircut than trying to style my hair and end up getting coronavirus. So anyway, that's why I looked up this article, and I figured if I'm going to read it, I might as well just show it with anybody who ends up watching this. So shopping for groceries during the coronavirus pandemic can be a stressful task, with long lines at the registers or outside the markets for those that limit the number of customers allowed in stores in short supply of specific food and toiletries. But staying informed about the safest ways to shop can help relieve at least some of the anxiety associated with your next supermarket visit. This is on foxnews.com, by the way. The Food and Drug Administration and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, along with reputable doctors and organizations, have recently shared their guidelines for shopping during the pandemic, detailing the best practices for maneuvering through the markets, handling money, and even cooking it all once you get home. Quote, food production and manufacturing are widely dispersed throughout the U.S., and there are currently no widespread disruptions reported in the supply chain, the FDA writes in its food products FAQ page, adding that the agency is closely monitoring that supply chain for any changes. That looks like a Publix buggy, by the way. They have green handles on them. I don't know of any other grocery store that has green all over their buggy, so I think that's probably in my neck of the woods. When it comes to handling the foods or food packaging themselves, both the FDA and the U.S. Department of Agriculture says that there is currently no evidence to suggest that COVID-19 can be transmitted by handling, either through the FDA notes that it is possible the virus that causes the coronavirus may be able to live on surfaces or objects. The CDC adds that while it's possible to become infected by touching a contaminated surface and touching the face, quote, this is not thought to be the main way the virus spreads. The FDA adds that there is no evidence to support the notion of contracting coronavirus from imported goods. Despite this, shoppers should continue to protect their health and safety by practicing good respiratory hygiene, coughing into their elbow, staying home while sick, etc., and personal hygiene, which is refraining from touching potentially contaminated surfaces and properly washing your hands, at all times during the coronavirus outbreak, even at the supermarket. As noted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which is the acronym CSIS in Washington, D.C., consumers should also be social distancing when shopping, which includes maintaining a distance of at least 6 feet between yourself and others wherever possible and whenever possible. Other tips highlighted by the CSIS suggest wiping down the handle of the shopping cart with a disinfectant wipe before use, using a credit card to minimize the handling of cash, or even shopping at off-peak hours to avoid crowded marketplaces. As for the types of foods to purchase, Ready.gov advises that anyone planning to remain at home for long periods of time should consider non-perishable foods such as canned goods or dry mixes that don't require refrigeration, like ready-to-eat canned meats, fruits, and vegetables. Ready.gov also recommends keeping a manual can opener handy too. And as always, consumers should be aware of the safest practices for the storage and preparation of non-perishable and perishable items once out of the grocery store to prevent contamination of foodborne illness. Non-perishable goods should be kept in cool, dry places and preferably in containers for added protection, if being kept in storage for long periods of time, according to Ready.gov. It's also not safe to eat food from cans that have become, quote, swollen, dented, or corroded, even though the product may look safe to eat. And what they're worried about is botulism, because it doesn't have a taste, it doesn't have a smell. But if you have a dented can and if there's botulism in it, then you are going to get insanely sick. And now is not the time to get insanely sick. When it comes to perishable items, the FDA recommends its 4-step process: clean, separate, cook, and chill, in order to keep illness-causing germs at bay. And that's all I have, folks. That's it. That concludes this. So I got through all the articles this time, unlike last night, where I just dragged it on for a couple of hours. I guess I did go about an hour and a half in this time, but not too bad. Not too bad. We're about to cross the threshold of 250,000 people affected by this. Like I said, every day this goes, the faster the numbers are going to climb, especially in the United States. Now that testing kits are available, by and large, relatively speaking. I mean, I know it's not available to every single person, but yeah. So I guess if you think that you might have come in contact with coronavirus, I know that there's a number of sources. If you want, if you're unfamiliar with trying to find those resources, you can leave me a comment in the section below and I'll be sure I see it. And I'll include that in my next video on ways that you can go about finding maybe a map, or you can find various locations in your area and what avenues that you have to pursue to be able to find those local locations that you might need. And I'm sure that those are on government websites, which I will be looking for initially. And if you want, you can give out your city, and maybe I'll do a little research on your city specifically, and I'll be sure to try to find something for you. So if you have any questions at all, any concerns, any issues, if something I said wasn't accurate, definitely let me know. Put anything that you think is important in the comments below. If you want me to mention something in my next video, I just today I looked through all of my past videos going back to my first one. Of course, still no comments, very little views. There's like 8 views, but I honestly and frankly don't care. I'm just doing this because I'm bored. But if you really want me to look up something, or if you think there's anything important out there, or if you want to learn something, or if you don't have time to do so, or maybe even if you just don't have the know-how to navigate the internet very well, just send your question down on the comments and I'll check it out and I will respond to it. I'll respond to it on the next video. So anyway, until next time, that's basically it. And let me know if you have any tips, any suggestions, if there's anything that's important out there that I'm not covering. I am very eager to find anything out there because I'm just doing simple news article searches and I just pluck things out that seem important that everybody should know. So if you find something that's worth talking about, just hit me up in the comments below. Like, subscribe if you like the video, or not. I don't honestly care, but thank you very much for watching nevertheless. Definitely stay extremely safe out there. Keep your hands clean. Stay out of restaurants. I'm so sorry, restaurant industry. I know we'll get through this. You know what? Just order out. Order takeaway. At least do that. Support your local businesses as best as you can, but don't actually go into the restaurants. And just on one quick final note, there are a lot of fast food restaurants out there. Those restaurants include places like Chick-fil-A and McDonald's and Burger King, Wendy's, and a big number of other places. Whataburger. It just goes on and on. There is a large list you can find online. These restaurants are still open, these fast food places. Most of them either have their dining room closed, or you can go into the building, but you're only allowed to order a carryout and you're not allowed to sit down anywhere. So just keep in mind that if you're cooped up in your house like I am, and if you have this strong craving for fast food, just know that they are still open, and it really wouldn't hurt to go out and spend money at these locations, especially the family-owned places where they are set up for takeaway. And just be careful that when you get home to sanitize all the packaging, sanitize everything that you can. I'm sure the food's fine because it's cooked to the right temperature and everything, but just as a precaution, just grab a Lysol wipe. Well, I don't want to plug that brand. I guess I already did, but just grab a disinfecting wipe and just wipe down everything. Take everything out of the bags and then throw the bags away, and then wash your hands and then disinfect everything that you ordered. That way that it's all nice and clean and ready to eat and nobody else accidentally got infected. Just make sure you're the only one handling everything. And then you can spread it out to everybody else in the house. Food, I mean, I'm not talking about germs, but yeah, at all possible, take advantage of your local business. Just be incredibly and completely OCD when you're out there, because a lot of your fellow peers just don't give a crap. They don't care about anything until they get sick, and when they do get sick, they especially don't care about anybody else. They get crazy selfish, and that's just unfortunately the way the first world works, at least, if not the entire world. But anyway, until tomorrow, that's it for now, and thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will see you around this time tomorrow. Stay extremely safe out there, people. Thank you.